Good morning, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day for those of you that are observing that holiday. I welcome, and it's good to be with you this morning. Katie may or may not join us this morning. We'll see if she's able, and if she isn't, we'll be thinking about her the entire time and sending her lots of good vibes and lots of love for her journey today. We briefly discussed talking about, what did we say?
Reframing.
Thank you. Reframing. All I can think of is the story we tell ourselves. Reframing the story that you tell yourself, being aware of the story that you tell yourself, and choosing what's true rather than the well-worn paths through the brain. I think it's super important. We had a little foray into that this morning, and I mean, gosh, it's an all-day, everyday thing, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We find ourselves, I think some of the science behind it is these neural pathways that get created in our brain that are literally like the paths the animals in the forest take. They get worn down, well-worn, and easier to travel on. And it's the path of least resistance. I think it's also habitual. And I think it's also a function of the brain keeping us safe and remembering all the negative stuff and not the positive stuff, not all of the positive stuff. And so I think that it's super important to ask yourself in literally every circumstance. So many things are coming into my space. One of the most important ones is that the interactions that we have with other people aren't ever about us. Our part of that interaction is about us, but what we receive behaviorally from somebody else doesn't have anything to do with us at all. And so being cognizant of the story that you tell yourself around those interactions with others, I think if you're going to focus on one place, I think that's a really good place to start because it seems to have a bigger impact, more bang for your buck. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, Steph, you're muted.
Glitch. It's a conversation. It's a conversation that I tend to have fairly regularly. Katie. Good morning. Hello, sweetness. Yes. So just, that remembering, that the realization, the awareness that most of us are really walking around pulling bits from the archival system as we're interacting with people and they're showing up. A lot of the time that's the foundation of their operation. And it's a very, very easy place to just slip right back into. We have to remind ourselves, wait a second, okay, that's coming up because, all right, I had that feeling about that one time way back then when XYZ happened and it didn't go well and it was a disaster. And so now I'm bringing that into my current moment and it doesn't belong here. Not in this one. This is a brand new moment, a brand new possibility, a brand new opportunity. Mm-hmm. So giving yourself that awareness and opportunity and invitation all at the same time to see that for what it is. And like Kat said, we use it to protect ourselves. We really and truly do. And in so many instances, that's very important. And we have to remember that. And also, again, see it for what it is. In the context of that moment, we can use it a lot of different ways, but just the awareness of what it is and where it comes from and why we're so quick to grab a hold of it is helpful in dealing with the now and the way that we see the now with that lens of the archival system that continually just pops up. Mm-hmm. That's what kind of comes alive for me when you talk about it the way you did, Kat.
Katie, we're talking about the stories we tell ourselves and reframing things.
Oh, definitely a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I was
Morning,
just,
honey.
yeah, I was just talking to somebody about pattern interrupting because our minds are just, they're computers, they go with what's worked in the past. And half of us don't even realize we're thinking about things. It's all taking place subconsciously half the time because we're walking around half awake, going through the same routine every day, day in, day out. You know what I mean? Just the whole monotony of it. And you wonder why you keep finding yourself in the same place over and over again, facing the same lessons, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, what do you have running through?
So for me, this topic is really, for me, it talks about our power as divinities, as divine beings. We have an incredible amount of power. We have the power to become upset by something someone else does. We have the power to take on what we see and feel something attached to that. No one has that power over us. We have that power. So when we talk about things like reframing, we have the power to look at an event and say, I don't want to feel that way anymore. I want to feel this way. I want to, instead of allowing this to bring me down and make me feel unworthy or unloved, I have the ability, I have the power to detach myself from that and not go into that emotional place. You have the power to decide how you want to feel. And for me, it's such an empowering thought when you not only accept that, but play with it, try it, see how well it works. And then you start to use it subconsciously. All of a sudden you realize, you know what? Why am I feeling sad right now? Why am I feeling angry? I don't want to feel angry. Oh, that's not my emotion. Let me just push that out. We have the power to do that. We are such incredible beings that once you start doing that, you take control of your path. And for me, it is the journey, is learning that you have that power and using it.
Hi, babe. You're on TV.
Hi.
Hey, Ryan.
Oh, they got sorry.
Somebody, I was just having a conversation, this molecular geneticist that specializes in epigenetics, which if people aren't familiar with that term, they've now found that, our DNA, our genes, what we bring into our life is not just linked back to your mom and your dad. It goes back now several hundred years of ancestral DNA, that we bring forward with each generation. And he was saying, when you think about like the whole morphogenetic field, if I'm saying it correctly, like we're all swirling around different countries, different cultures, male, feminine, on such a bigger scale, that 90% of the stuff that we deal with and we feel and we think is our own is really not all our own. We're bringing in patterns from our ancestors. We're tapping into, like a background frequency, if you will, that's been in place for, hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And so that takes what Chris is saying to like a whole nother level of really, what am I feeling? Is it really mine at all? What do I do with this? Do I lean in? Do I have the energy to process it and to clear it, whether it's mine or whether I'm just contributing to, the greater good, the greater morphogenetic field? Or do I continue the pattern? It's so fascinating.
It is fascinating. The whole genetic piece, this is a slight diversion, but the whole genetic piece is super interesting to me because my mother recently had her DNA swab results come back. And most of the people in my family have done this at this point. And what's interesting is there are a number of people in my family that are, this isn't even true, but the way we would speak about it is they're not genetically related to us. They're not that have been adopted from other parents, or maybe they've come through somebody's body, but the egg and the sperm are adopted, adoption of all sorts. And one thing that has been made very clear to me as I look at these DNA results, and how do I want to say this? We have all had many lifetimes together.
Mm-hmm.
We have all been in a definable way that our science is now familiar with, genetically related, and in the definable ways that our science presently understands, not genetically related. And that isn't true. None of that is true, in my opinion. What I receive when I look at that is the lives that we've had in the different places that we've had them, because we have created a conglomeration of souls from around the globe, and all of us have DNA from those places. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? It's interesting. It's interesting, that history. And it's absolutely palpable. It's absolutely familiar. The bond between these people is no less than if they came through your body or didn't come through your body. How we come here, whose body we come through, how we come to be on this plane, and coming through someone's body isn't the only way to come to be on this plane, right? A body, step-ins, drop-ins, all those sorts of things. But the ways in which we arrive or depart, they just don't matter. And it's just, I don't know, I guess I could tie it into, it's part of the story that we tell ourselves, right? About these people and the history and the things that science can make sense of. Science itself is part of the story that we tell ourselves. I mean, what isn't a part of the story that we tell ourselves while we're here?
I think your point is interesting, because they always, you always hear the argument of nurture versus nature, and how much environment plays into someone's conditioning, as well as genetic.
Yeah, and I would remove versus. We all choose the. I'm sorry. I'm going to put myself on mute. Somebody else jump in.
Yeah, I think what always comes to my mind when you hear these conversations is you're talking about the bigger picture. So in this life, we just lost Steph too. We're just hemorrhaging people right now. What you think of as what you're feeling today, what you had to go through in this life, it's a drop in the bucket of the bigger picture of things. So this life, what you're feeling right now, that story you're telling yourself right now about who you are, who your parents are, who your friends are, why that defines who you are, whether it's nurture and nature, that combination of everything. That is a drop in the bucket of who and what you are. It is a much, much bigger picture, which is why I always like stepping out of things. And I think it helps to reframe when you're able to step out of that and say, this is one life in the thousands that I've lived. I don't need to feel abandoned because my mother wasn't there for me. I don't need to let the fact that I didn't have a father growing up define who I am as an adult, because this is a life that I chose, one of thousands. I choose what I move forward with. I choose what I embrace and what I use in this life. So I like how all those things tie in together. It's pieces of the puzzle, right? You get to define what that puzzle looks like. Nobody else does. You take those pieces and you say what that picture is going to look like. Nobody else gets to say what that puzzle is going to look like.
And one of the ways that I try to approach that is pulling myself into the present moment. Because a lot of times when I get triggered and I have an emotional response to something, and then it triggers me to think of my past. Oh, this has happened to me before. I'm such a victim. why is God mad at me? Why does he keep doing this to me? But if you just stay in the present moment, it helps so much with you being able to just manage this particular situation and how you're going to respond to it, and, reframe it, move forward, and don't future trip and don't past trip. I don't know. I used to always tell my son, like, he dealt with anxiety and depression. And depression is simply getting caught up in thinking about the past. And anxiety is caught up in thinking about the future. And think of how many of us are walking around with depression and anxiety right now.
Oh, absolutely. If one of the things that I would say ultimately my mother suffered from, which led her to drinking and drugs and being abusive, was that feeling of she was the victim. She could not see why the world was doing what it was doing to her. She couldn't understand what she had done to deserve it. So every pain she absorbed, she made it a part of her identity, so that and I don't say as an excuse, but I don't even know the right word for it. It was a way of labeling herself. And she fed into it. She believed it so much that it became who she was at the expense of everything else in her life. Now, those are choices. That's part of free will. We have the choice how we want to deal with the challenges in our life. But you don't have to make those choices either. And it's never too late to say, you know what? I am not a victim. I have never been a victim. I have had challenges. I have had moments of straight up rock bottom, but I am not a victim. That's why I was like the I am a warrior mentality, because that's how I feel every time I stand back up from a challenge. I'm not a victim. I'm nobody's victim. And that's a choice. And not an easy one. It's a choice you have to make every day, maybe 20 times a day.
It's not an easy one, but it's not easier to go the opposite way either.
Yeah, absolutely.
It may feel like it, but the consequences of the other choices, in my opinion, are so much less easy.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm all about vibration and frequency, and it's really interesting when you start thinking of the heaviness, the weight of heavier energies, and how it can feel like, once you let yourself drop down to the bottom. I always like picture being at the bottom of a well and trying to climb my way out. It's like that heavy energy, and you take one, you get one rung and then you slip back down, and then you just end up going, okay, I'm not going to make it out of the well. But if you can keep yourself in a higher vibrational frequency, it's so much easier to maintain that and to pull yourself out, and not let that become your identity.
I think that's a pattern we see in every aspect of life. If you allow yourself to get to the bottom, it's harder to climb back to the top. If you can catch yourself on your downward trajectory, it's the same with eating. It's the same with working out. Before you get to a point where you no longer have control, if you can catch yourself somewhere in there, it's easier to get back up to the top because you haven't gone as far down.
Is it really easier?
Yeah. Just coming from like the bottom of the bottom, I'm still struggling after my son's death. I vibrate pretty high. So if I'm understanding your question, Kat, maybe I'm not.
But I'm saying, I think every circumstance is going to be different for everybody who's in it. And I think that's another story that we tell ourselves. If you allow yourself to slide all the way to the bottom, it's going to be harder to get back out. I don't know. Sometimes when you slide all the way to the bottom, the incentive, the drive that you have is greater than if you don't slide all the way to the bottom. And that can make up for a whole lot. And I could probably come up with a whole bunch of extra ways or different things that might pop one way versus the other way. So I think that's one of those things where it's like, in a perfect world, we might think, well, if we don't slide all the way to the bottom, there's benefit in that. But what if part of this journey was supposed to be sliding to the bottom?
And I think it depends how long you let yourself stay at the bottom.
Well, and
Because
And
you're
there's
right.
depth
Yeah.
there, right? And you might not get out of the bottom. And you may choose to stew and marinate in the bottom for this lifetime, and then address it after you've crossed out of this body and continue on the rest of your journey in whatever way you choose, right? I don't think there's a right or wrong. I also don't think that there's always, I don't think that it's harder, it's easier, is as simple as we make it frequently. I really don't.
Yeah.
And I also think
you are the master of reframing for that exact reason. I got to say, I just wanted to caveat that.
Thanks. I also think that even calling it hard or harder is interesting, because when we move through something and then we look at it with the benefit of hindsight, we see it very differently than when we're in it. When we're in something that's unfamiliar, we call it hard, almost always. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's actually not as trying, doesn't take as much as some of the other options, but it's unfamiliar to us. And so I think it's worth investigating literally everything, literally every single thing that we think that comes out of our mouth, that we share with others, the ideas that we sort of put out there in the world and give energy and vibration and weight and gravity to, because unfamiliar is not the same thing as hard. And I'm not saying there's no such thing as a difficult experience. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a hard experience. I'm simply saying that I think things are often not as hard as we say that they are, and sometimes they're not at all, and they're just unfamiliar. And we go, oh God, this is going to be so hard. What a pain in my ass, blah, 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 blah. And then we look back and go, oh, wow, that wasn't so bad at all. A lot.
And it was purposeful. The pain had a purpose. I can look back on every rock bottom event of my life and say, thank God I went through that, because it led to something. It was my awakening moments. It was the times that I found strength that I didn't know that I had. Not a single one I would go back and say, I wish I hadn't fallen as far as I did, or for as long as I did, because each and every one had a purpose that I can see in hindsight.
Yeah, there are no accidents on this plane. There are no coincidences, on this plane. So it's just really all about what there is to dig into, in my opinion.
I like to think of, I reframe like the unfamiliar and the unknown as adventure. Like you're saying, it's all the way that you word it, that you approach it, that you put your energy, you know?
A lot of that, even when you say that, Katie, it makes me think of the feelings, like as they come up, and how so often I have caught myself doing it. It's something that I've started to become more aware of with the awareness that I hope I'm about to share with some effectiveness. But the idea that when we have that feeling come up, you know, that we so often call nervous, or we call it anxious, or, you know, we call it so many things, when how often is it really just excited?
I know.
It's just a misunderstood excitement because of, and that takes me back to Kat. Now I'm like pinging up here, right? Because the unfamiliar territory, when it's unfamiliar, it's hard, it's scary, it's nervous. I was going to bite my finger, but
That's a power finger.
Everybody, my bandaged finger. That's how I.
Oh no!
That's how I exited the show just a little while ago. Whoops. But yeah, I feel like it's misunderstood emotion, feelings that come up, and sometimes we don't always have the language to put those feelings into play the way that they could be, because of the awareness that we might be lacking about where that feeling is really coming from and how to use it and play with it and make it amazing.
Also, we are moving into a time of something very new. And there are actually new experiences and new feelings, new ways of being that haven't been defined. And so if we're not looking, if we're only looking at this small little box of, these are the emotions, the human emotions that exist. These are the experiences that one can have in this sort of circumstance, and in this sort of circumstance, and in this sort of circumstance. We're going to short ourselves out in all kinds of ways that aren't going to facilitate the journey that we've chosen to have while we're here. It's so important that you really do allow for limitless opportunity, literally limitless opportunity. Let go of the story and just allow yourself to be in the space and feel. Just feel. Watch the feeling, learn from the feeling. Don't become the feeling. Watch it like a movie, right? And feel into what's there, and then express it. Literally express it, as in express it, say it, cry it, sing it, whatever, express it. The expression literally expresses it out of your body so that you don't, so it doesn't lodge there.
I'm
And
hearing emotional detox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it also illuminates the experience. The expression illuminates the experience. If you allow yourself to just be the physical being that you were designed to be while you're here on this experiential plane, allow what's flowing through you to flow through you and express, it also illuminates what is flowing through you, where it's coming from, where you're coming from, and what there is there, what there is to do with what's there, what options and opportunities. That stuff gets illuminated in the expression, in my opinion.
Imagine when that happens with a bunch of people together all at the same time. That's some big, beautiful stuff unraveling, unfolding, being created. That expression, like I was just seeing, Kat, while you were saying that ripple effect that takes place and how much more amplified it becomes with full expression when full expression is involved.
Yeah.
That's
What do you
start
think?
changing the world.
What'd you say?
That's how you start changing the world and impacting the morphogenetic field and the whole butterfly effect, clearing. I mean, we're not just clearing our own stuff. When we express, we are actually clearing eons upon eons of, trauma or whatever it is that people have shoved down and not expressed. And then it just continues.
Totally. And that being said, I also want to point out that we're only here to do us.
Well, it depends on what level you're at. Agreed, but everything is a choice.
I'm not talking about that we won't impact others. I'm talking about, for me, keeping the focus here, because I will do my journey when I keep the focus here. If my focus is out here, I will not do my journey to the fullest. I won't. If my focus is here, doing me, doing my journey, there's no way I cannot impact the whole. But I say this because I think a lot of light workers get stuck in the idea of, I'm not doing anything for me, or I'm doing mostly for others. I'm here to do this. How do I figure out how to do this? And that isn't how we do. What we do is we figure out how to do this, and the rest falls into place.
Yes. Balance of everything.
Yeah.
Of expression. I agree.
So 2 things. First, I could totally feel that. I felt that shift in my own energy the other day when the 4 of us were texting about, like, I'd come up with a new definition for what it was that I did, because I don't fit in any mold. I don't like them. All the titles that I've earned through classes just don't fit me. So I'd sent you ladies my write-up on what it was. And just by doing that, by defining me, I felt more energized. I went on after that and did a post that got more responses than any of the others had, because I was owning my own truth. And I was less worried about how it was going to be portrayed by the people. I could feel my energy shift just slightly when I did that, when I was more worried about how do I define me for me. And then I'm just going to put that information out there. And if it resonates with you, it resonates with you. And it will affect who it's supposed to affect. So it was such a subtle thing, but it had a profound impact, not just on that day, but I feel it pushing me forward now in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. I feel spirit pushing me forward in that way.
Yeah, it's so beautiful when we step into something, the uniqueness of what we bring, especially now, because so many of us are doing things that have never existed on this plane before. And so if we're looking for, well, what do I fit into? How do I this? What do I call this? That sounds weird. Nobody's ever called themselves that. And we stay in that place. We're going to have we're not going to experience the same results as if we fully, uniquely invest in, dig into, own whatever it is we're bringing to this plane that's new and different, because all of us are.
And the second thing was, I feel that Kat's downloading something when you said there was new emotions coming down that we haven't felt before. There was more to it.
Yeah, there's more to it. But everybody has to. There are 4 of us.
I know, but I could feel it. I'm like, well, there's a message there that has to be shared. So share it.
What do you get? You and I ride the same channel. I'm telling you, all the time.
I said the same thing. When we're sitting at a table, there's no Kat and Chris talking. It's just constant coming in, just coming in. I don't know where this stuff come from. I'm not that smart.
Oh, please. Yes, you are.
But I could, but I mean, this information is not coming from me. And I love being able to sit there and just kind of filter the information down and act as that filter. But I could feel it when you're talking about new emotions, like almost getting visions of what that new earth is going to look like, you know, where we are not set in the mold of when you are dumped, you should feel X. When you are at work, you should feel Y. When you go on the bus and it's crowded, I should feel Z. It's going to be brand new. It's emotions that we don't have words for and can't even describe, but the level is higher.
I can't stop.
All of it is higher.
Because I'm not getting the information.
It's just coming across the screen. When you're saying it, I could see it. I could just see everybody's. It was just everything was higher. You're
seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Just
you define your own truth, and the emotions are yours. They're your souls. They're not what you have been told to feel or to be.
Well, and that ties into the self-empowerment that we are moving into as we move into this new age. And eventually we will be in a place of telepathic communication based on empathy, because we will be so in tune with the emotional field, which is really our spirit awareness. And then it's hard to hate someone else when you can literally feel what that feels like, you know, and it's bouncing back. And so the more we tune into our emotions, the more empathy we have, and the more telepathically we are able to communicate and to exchange with each other, that will change everything. So with that, of course, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. You're going to have new levels of emotional feeling, new emotions, shared emotions. It's going to be beautiful.
It is beautiful. We're already there. We all come in with the ability to do that, right? We just get removed from the tool bag that we're all designed to have. We get, I say, socialized and verbalized right out of it. Everybody tries really hard. And that is happening less and less and less. And many of us are here to help people to remember, to reclaim those things. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Katie. I just am pointing out we're here. It's now.
Well, and I do think that you're seeing more and more people coming forward and saying, I am an empath and it's okay. You know, or before, you know, gosh, you know, you thought it was a curse to be an empath, but the empaths, yeah, they're the forerunners, the front runners that are stepping out and, you know, showing people how to open that up within themselves, and that it's okay. And it's a superpower.
It's a power. It's a living, you know, I don't want to call it a superpower. Here's why I don't want to call it a superpower. It is a superpower. No, listen, it is.
I know, it's just funny. You're so literal.
I'm so literal. And it's this, I can't turn it off. Like literally, it's part of my, you know, human design. It's part of what helps me to do what I do. But when we call it a superpower, there's this idea that not everybody can access it. And it's this idea that it's supernatural, that it's, you know, outside of the norm. And it's not. We all have it. All of us have it. Literally all of us, even those of us who are like, no, no, yes, We all have it. And it's something that isn't that difficult to remember, to reclaim, to turn back on if it's been turned off. So I think that it's super important that gets said. I don't know.
I feel like empathy is almost a gateway. It allows you to do a thousand different things. In and of itself, I don't know why I see it like a gate. You use empathy to see into other people, to bring their energy to you, to allow your heart to touch other people. Honestly, don't even know why I'm seeing that, but I see it like arches, and it allows you to feel and expand and realize how connected you really are to everybody around you. That's our natural state of being, I think, is what I'm saying. That empathy in the human body allows you to feel your natural sense, your natural connection to the all.
100%.
Agree with that. Yeah.
It feels like what you're seeing is connected to the bridging that you do.
That look like the McDonald's arches, by the way. That's a different type of bridging.
For yourself and for others, that bridging. And it would make sense, actually, that you would see it that way with the bridging, because that's facilitating a bridge for people to see this item, how you use it as a bridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I actually, I love these conversations for many different reasons. I love, Kat, your literalism, because but no,
Don't worry about it. I know it's a pain in the ass to deal with.
no, it's not at all. For me, whenever you do that, it allows me to see a phrase in a different manner. And it always helps me. It helps me expand my own thought process, because I'm a very left brain person as well. So when you take a term like superpowers and you put it out there in a different light, it expands me. It just naturally does. Like, I hadn't thought about the power of that one word, whatever that word was. That's why I call you the queen of reframing. It's not just because you can see the other side of things. It's because things have a larger meaning that we don't always see, and you help us to see that larger meaning.
Thank you for always being patient and kind with that, all of you.
Oh, I love it.
It's easy to deal with. I literally can't turn it off. It is part of my design. It is part of how I spell, how I create, how I manifest. It's I understand the power of it inside and out, and it's very difficult for me, even in the guise of being polite or allow it. Like, it eats me.
Well, then you have to express it, like you said.
I love it. I think it's phenomenal. And it allows me to, I'm very visual, so it allows me to see images. When you're talking about a superpower, and especially in the spiritual world, there are still many groups out there that treat spirituality like it's something you have to be born with or earn. It's something outside of you, something extraterrestrial, extra whatever. And that's an illusion that we put forward, or that has been put forward, to create fear, to create a sense of power in there, that only a certain elite can do that. That it took me a long time to figure that out, that just because I wasn't born like, a great medium, one of the famous mediums, talking to ghosts as a baby, didn't mean I didn't have powers that were mine, and were mine by soul right, by spirit right. Coming to terms with that it's not something extraterrestrial, it's not something supernatural, it's you. And everybody has that gift.
It's natural, yeah. It's not supernatural, it's natural. I would say also, though, I do think that it's true. I sat for a long time in the space of everybody can do all the same stuff that everybody else can do. And I don't actually think that's true. You guys may disagree. I would be interested to hear what you have to say on this and everything, always. But I don't actually think that that's true anymore. I think that there are those of us who we certainly all can choose to do that, and we all can engage in those sorts of things. And there are some of us who come here whose journeys are literally, whose journeys require that they engage in those things in a different way. And so there will be people who are doing more of this or more of that, or there are some people, and not just with regard to this, with regard to every single thing that exists on this plane. There are people who are going to be doing something at a higher level than somebody else is, and that doesn't mean that somebody else isn't as good or isn't as whatever. Our journeys do require design that will facilitate what we've come here to do. And I do also think there are younger souls and older souls and masters and blah, 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 and all that stuff exists. And that is not like on this plane that would stratify people. That does not stratify anybody on the other side of the veil. I think that those things exist. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that stuff.
I think they exist in that age group for a purpose. You know, life is cyclical. It's constantly moving and evolving. You need young, excited, passionate, voracious energy, and you need the quiet, mature, older energy, and it's constantly moving. So I agree. It's not about, oh, I'm older, I know better. Your energy is constantly moving like this. The energy of the world, the universe is constantly moving like that. And I think we have gifts that are naturally inherent to us that we have developed in order to fit into our role. I would definitely see our skills just among the four of us as different, complementary, as all skills are meant to be complementary. I think we are stronger when we're together than we are when we're apart, but we definitely have different gifts. I think that's awesome. That's why I always say you have your own truth. What is your truth? Because you can't have my truth. I mean, it just wouldn't fit you. It'd be like trying to wear my clothes. Some of them would look great. Some of them might not fit you. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that one. I got lost in my own head on that one. I started seeing my closets. It got really weird up in my brain.
No, I can definitely see the spectrums as you talk about the gifts and the way that they come in for people. Do I believe that everyone can have every gift? Yeah, but are they going to? No. That's not, to what Kat said and Chris even expounded on, the way that we show up and use our gifts. We don't show up and use them all to the nth degree. And we can't, and we shouldn't. And it would be really weird if we were all doing that. Would it not?
Yeah.
It would be strange. The differentiation would not be there. The uniqueness would not be there. The teamwork, the unity, the collective, none of that would be there. What would you need support for if you could do all of it?
I think we're meant to be together. We're not meant to be little oceans of perfection. We're meant to support each other. And you think about like astrology, when you're coming down, you choose the planetary alignments that you go through. And if you think of each of those as an ingredient in your recipe, you're like, I need a little bit of this. I need a little bit of dill. I need a little bit of basil. All right, I'm ready to go. I taste great. I'm in a weird place today.
You are funny today.
We're in a weird place. I don't know what's coming out of my mouth. But if you think of it like that, you're coming to this planet and you're choosing your wonderful cocktail recipe so that you can support the mission on Earth. You can support the other souls that are here. It's not meant to be, and that's a wonderful expression, many petals on every rose. Yeah. We're here to become something together, not to be.
Everybody is meant to be ranch dressing. It kind of sounded like that's what you were making. I don't know, but
I was very herby. Very herby. I have no idea. I swear I'm sober. I don't know what's happening to me. It's just flavored water. Flavored water.
Our cheeks are a little flushed there.
I had a student ask me that in a class. I was teaching with some Navy kids the other day, and I always have my water bottle. She's like, "What in God's name is in there? You're just so goofy." I'm like, I promise it's just water. Sorry, Katie. Go ahead, jump in there.
Well, I remember getting a astrology reading back in the day, and with this guy was such a unique, phenomenal astrologer, and we would sit for hours. I mean, it would take like 3, 4, 5 hours, for us to do a reading because we'd go so deep. Anyways, he was bringing, up things, and, the instinct was to call them my gifts. But he said, I'm not going to use the word gifts. It's based on practice. You have been exposed to these types of traits in prior lives, and that's just how you've gotten better at those that maybe come into this lifetime and are as expressed as some people might call gifts. But yeah, I think we can all get there. It's just some people have had a focus in a particular niche for many lifetimes, and that's why people think they're a natural or whatever it is.
And you take that step back and you look at planetary as well. This is not the first planet we've inhabited as souls. We've inhabited many planets, and those planets have their own energy, their own gifts that they cultivate. Some are very physical, some are very mental, some are very esoteric. You go to those planets and you live on those planets to acquire those gifts so that you can then bring them into your next life. All of that is very intentional. It's they're pieces of who you are. And no two souls are made exactly the same, which is intentional in itself. That's the purpose. That's how we find our passion and our missions. Our missions are even different. So if you've never done, we've done regressions and things of that nature where you go to other planets and you see what they're like. Some planets resonate with you more because you've lived lives there. Sometimes many lives so that you can cultivate those gifts more strongly. Sometimes just 1 or 2 lives so that you can just touch that energy. Did I stump y'all?
No, I was just having get stuck in some information. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. What information did you get?
The planet thing. I don't remember what question I asked. I asked a question about the planets. It was this is so hard to put into words. I'm sorry. Like them not existing in our universe in a physical way, like the a wormhole into one reality or another reality or another reality or another reality kind of thing. I think I was asking some version of where are they in relation, or are they still, or I don't even know. That's not what I asked. I can't tell you what I asked, and I don't. I need some time to sit with that one. That's the best I can do with it right now. Sorry.
So my understanding of what I've seen, the information I've gotten on the other planets, and I'm not talking about the ones in our solar system. I'm talking about I know
what you're talking about.
Pleiadians, Syrians, all those other wonderful ones.
Yeah.
The way I understand the cycle is that planets are created from souls, one soul or many souls, in order to allow other souls to grow and evolve. It's an agreement. It's a soul agreement that we make. As the planet goes into its evolutionary cycle, so too do the souls that are on the planet. As that planet reaches the end of its evolutionary cycle, the ascension period, those souls now go forward and seed another planet that's just beginning its evolutionary cycle. So it essentially ascends on an energy level to where it is now energy. It's not necessarily physical anymore. It has reached its evolutionary peak. Those souls who have reached their evolutionary peak can now go down and seed the DNA of the next planet, help to grow it so that the cycle constantly is going. It is constantly moving. And there are thousands of planets at any given point that are going through these cycles. So that's why when someone says, I am Pleiadian, that's great. You probably have spent many lives on Pleiades. I guarantee you spent lives on other planets as well. Some resonate with us in different ways. And your soul has gone through these wonderful cycles so many times. I think that's why, for me, I lean into fear. Because I came onto this planet knowing I was going to be here for the ascension, because I've done it before. I like that feeling of ascension for a planet, because it means we're doing something correct. And that's back to the old and the new souls. Everything is constantly cyclical. Our planet is coming towards the end of its ascensionary cycle. Now, I don't know what that looks like in time period. I don't think that matters. But that means there will be another Earth that is being born, that is getting ready to do the same thing, to allow these souls to constantly move and constantly transition and constantly grow, to develop that creator energy. It's almost like feeding the creation of life. We're constantly feeding it with our evolution. So I don't know that there are physical planes of other planets, although in some cases I'm sure that there are. But once they are ascended, wouldn't the soul planet be released to continue on its energy somewhere else? It releases back into the energy cycle.
Yeah, this entire discussion would require a conversation also about time.
Hmm.
Which
and I've got DNA coming in all over the place.
Yeah.
Right back into that conversation about the new emotions and the new beings coming here to express and bring language to those emotions, and the ancestral DNA, the collective DNA. Oh my gosh, just it's all.
If you look at shows like Ancient Aliens, which my husband loves Ancient Aliens, there are some truths that they say on there. There's some silliness of it as well, but they talk about the Pleiades coming down to Earth in the beginning of its human cycle and seeding the DNA, changing the DNA to allow for consciousness. They don't say it like that, but that's essentially what they're saying. And then the Pleiadians stayed there. The Pleiadian sisters, the 7 sisters, stayed and helped bring forth consciousness and light to humans, so that humans could begin their evolutionary cycle. You think of that as seeding the DNA of a planet so that it could evolve. And now, as we reach the end, coming back in, bringing that energy back in to help with the final phases of evolution. That's why it feels to me that there's so much more energy, so many more people coming in than before. Not necessarily in human form, but I kind of feel surrounded all the time by support. The universe is so much more talkative than I felt it was before, because they're back. They were here at the beginning, and now they're back for the end of it. It's a really exciting time. I get really very excited when I think about how it all works, the cycles of it.
Yeah, I keep hearing the transition of it rather than the end of it, the transition of it.
That's a much better word for it. I don't think anything ever stops. I completely agree. But I think DNA plays a huge, huge role in that. I mean, science, we talked about science earlier with their story. The story that they tell themselves is that all information goes to a point, and then there's a wall. And you cannot explain anything past the wall. This is as far as we go. Those of us who are reading between the lines say the wall is just an illusion. It's not even really there. Once they start telling themselves a different story and realize that that wall is not a barrier, it's possibly the answer. And you just have to accept the truth of what it is. It's just people's minds are going to start exploding all over the place, awakening all over the place, when we stop telling ourselves stories that have limitations, that have walls. Those are illusions.
Well, and oftentimes lack of faith.
That cycles back to self, having faith in yourself and your truth, and not in what you've been told to feel, to think, to do. That is a huge jump forward for anybody's journey when they start listening to themselves.
It is. And I think faith, this is like a chicken or the egg conversation, right? I was going to say, I think faith doesn't always necessarily start here. It didn't for me. It didn't start in me. In fact, I was able to access more faith by getting out of me. Still about my journey, but out of me. And especially, I think, when you're talking about engaging in the arena in which we're engaging, and also talking about engaging, when we talk about gifts and we talk about connectivity, and we talk about, telepathic communication, and we talk about, I just want to call it nonverbal communication, and all those sorts of things. I think that the place that you start is outside of yourself. I really do. I think that there's pressure to perform, and will I, and can I, and all this other kind of stuff. And if you instead get out of the way, just literally get out of the way, it's there. It's all there. It's all accessible. And so I'm just bringing that up in case there's somebody listening. I don't have a problem with anything you said. In case there's somebody listening, I think that sometimes it's helpful to start not by having, I don't want to say it's helpful to start by not having faith in yourself. That's not what I'm saying. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, what I want to say is I think it's helpful to start by having faith in the divine. Whatever you want to call that, whatever you want to access, I believe it's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. I call it God. I believe in God. And whatever you want to access, by having faith in that and allowing that to lead you and let go. And I believe that the faith that gets developed in ourselves, our divine selves, through that modality is deeper than what would develop if we were just focusing on self, which I'm not suggesting is what you said. I just wanted to add that out there.
What do you think, Katie?
About
Life.
What's in your space?
Life, love, the mystery of it all.
Today's Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is all about love. And for some reason, when I was hopping on the show, this Bible verse that I learned as a little girl came up about love, and that's us at our core. That's everything. That's like really it comes down to that. And I think it would be a beautiful way to kind of wrap up the show is just to remind us that love, faith, divine, all these things that we're talking about. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. It never fails. And I don't know. I just think, you got to start there. You love yourself. You love all that is, the good, the bad, the ugly. And you enjoy the ride. You enjoy the movie.
We love
I always have this visual that, my life is not at all turned out or is turning out like I ever would have pictured it as a little girl. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I didn't want to be like, all this stuff along the way. But I feel like at the end of it all, when I take my last breath and I, whatever that looks like, when I open my eyes to, the new experience of it all, is that all the people that have been in my life, it's going to be like the end of a big Broadway show. And it's like, we're all going to be laughing. People are going to be clapping. We're going to be bowing. The people that like instigated me the most, that broke me the most open, that like I might have been the most angry with, like we were talking about love, is not easily angered. They're going to be the ones that are, coming up going, good job. That was a great play. It was all good. We're just actors. We're just actors in a holographic movie. To a certain extent, we get to have a say in how that movie plays out and how we see that movie playing out. But it's still a movie and it's still playing out. And I guess there's a reason why we can't necessarily see the future, if you knew the end of the movie, like you'd walk out of the theater. So I don't know. That's what I think. It's probably all over the place, but it just, if all else fails, like just drop into love and the rest will make sense. Oh, Melinda, I love you. What is she saying? Love is the fabric of space and time. It is all there is. Everything else is an illusion. It's like we share a brain, Melinda.
Yeah, she was a master. She is absolutely a
She
master.
really is. And you know what? I was just reading something the other day. I don't even know how it popped into my field, Melinda, but it was talking about Arcturians. And somebody had said something at one point that Melinda and I both had this like Arcturian type of energy. And it really is a highly evolved type of loving energy. And so that's so funny. Here, Melinda and I are talking about love. I love it. There are no mistakes. This is synchronistic and so perfect for Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you to all of you. Thanks to those of you here with us today while we're expressing in what we hope is our fullest, most magnificent version, showing up to share and to learn and to explore these topics. And today, this especially relevant topic of love, because it is exactly what we all need. Dropping into love is where we should all drop. And I hope that each and every one of you who are with us today heard something that resonated with you and moved you in the way of love. I hope that you'll join us again next Sunday, just like every Sunday, 10 Pacific, 11 Mountain, 12 Central, right here on Facebook. Love it. I nailed it. Love you guys.